Good afternoon, Government of Canada. This is our M365 Council hosted by yours truly, Orangutech. Thank you for joining today. It is June 23rd. It is a somewhat overcast. Hopefully we're staving off the rain today. I know the rain's been in the forecast, but hopefully we avoid it today. Thank you for attending today. This is our fourth season for Orangutech's Government of Canada Council. Next slide, please. Perfect. This is our fourth season. We founded in 2018. We started in person, but we've since grown in the virtual space. Today is information as a departmental asset building enterprise. Eim and M365. If you don't know, Eim stands for Information Management. It is somewhere Orangutech does a lot of work in. It is where we pride ourselves in. At this present time, we love information management. We do some great IM work across departments, and we love putting this together for you guys. So who really is Orangutech, and why are we talking here at a council? Well, we are, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We're a Microsoft partner. We hold 4 competencies. We're on our road to gold in security. Globe and Mail's one of Canada's top growing companies in Globe and Mail, and we do business with federal government of Canada. 95% of our business is federal government. It's a space that we're very familiar in. It's a space that we're comfortable in, and it's a space that we love to work. And the council is really collaboration through shared experience. We believe here at Orangutech that the best way to learn is through other departments and through people. And as we've all sort of been working together towards M365 and towards the cloud, we want to share our successes, the implementations, plans, challenges, and lessons learned around M365 and what moving to the cloud or being in the cloud, some departments are in the cloud, what that looks like. So for today, if you have questions, please submit the questions in the Q&A module. If you can, please identify yourself when asking the questions. Vote for the questions that you want to see answered, and we will do Q&A at the end of the presentation. I will moderate question and answer period at the end of the presentation. As well, we will post, as an announcement, we will post Orangutech's YouTube channel. We have all of the previous Government of Canada M365 Council meetings up there. You'll be able to view those, see other topics that we've covered, and to hear from other departments. Our next M365 Council meeting will be in September. We will take the summer off. July, August, no meetings. We will take them off. So without further ado, presenting today is Ian Taylor. He's a lead IM architect, and he will be able to tell you a little bit more about that. Ian, you are on mute, my friend.
All right, off to a start here. Okay, I just want to double check everybody can see my screen okay?
Yep, we're good.
All right, excellent. So as Eric was saying, my name is Ian Taylor. I'm an IM architect specializing with M365. So I've been working in public and private sector in the space for just over 15 years. I'm currently working with ESDC and Department of Agriculture. So today, I'm going to be talking about making IM, modernization, a departmental asset inside M365. So to start us off, I'm going to go over some concepts that we're using to help guide our project and vision for IM and M365. I'm going to show a high-level roadmap, and then we'll take a closer look at our minimal viable product that we're delivering at ESDC and AFC. So first off, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we mean by information management and offering value to the business. So if we were to ask colleagues what information management is, most would talk about identifying records, how long to keep them, regulatory requirements, and so on. It's not really a fun or sexy topic. The word compliance is probably going to come up many times. It's a hard thing to get businesses to buy into. We really want to think about information management a little bit differently. So if we think about what goes into producing a single record, we have things like analysis, presentations, correspondence, recommendations, and so on. So a lot of this information is lost when we only focus on the final output of the record. This information can continue to have value to the business over and above being compliant. So thinking about IM as offering value to the business and not focusing only on records management, what we did is we came up with 5 pillars that help guide everything that we're delivering throughout our project. So starting with how IM can help users create and collaborate on their information, things like Teams collaboration, permissions, improved sharing, external collaboration, supporting business processes, and etc. We also can help the business use and reuse the information. So this is really focused on search from both basic and advanced search, and then navigation across the department and within branches. Learning from the information through business intelligence, analytics, and reporting, and then how we're going to organize and store the information in a consistent and standard repositories, focusing on business needs. So not just from a records management perspective. So I've been on projects where we'll end up organizing the information based off of records management functions and activities instead of how the business views or works with that information. And then finally, how do we govern and protect the information through controls such as sensitivity and retention labels, data loss prevention, permissions, and leveraging advanced e-discovery and holds to meet litigation and freedom of information requirements. All right, so let's shift gears and talk a little bit about delivery approach that we're following for our IM project in M365. So over the past 15 years, I've been on many projects where we define a repeatable process and we go business line by business line to get them up and running. And it's not a bad approach, but from an IM perspective, you end up with verticals within your organization. So there's little subtle differences on how the information is being managed group to group. It takes a long time to get through all your branches, and a few of the projects that I've taken this approach with have actually run out of time and money before we got through the entire organization. So what we're doing is we're taking an enterprise approach, and instead of going business line by business line, we got a group of representatives from all the business lines in a room, and we worked together to develop an enterprise IM framework that everyone could agree would meet the needs of many. So this process took us about 3 to 6 months, depending on the size of the organization. But we were able to agree on common types of information like HR and finance, meeting materials, legal, audit, and so on. We were then able to define the metadata that the business needed to help them organize that information, how to find it, also metadata that will help them to support their processes. How did they want to group and work with that information, and who needed to access it, and so on. So we also worked on, for the minimal viable product, we also worked on other pieces such as navigation. How are we going to apply that framework in M365? And once we had our minimal viable product ready, we're looking to roll that out across the entire organization. Okay, so all branches and directors and divisions will have this framework available to them to start using. And the key here is to provide a feedback loop to mature it. So what we wanted to do is get quicker out to market and then allow the business to tell us what they like, what they don't like, if they wanted different sites or library templates or metadata or change in the control vocabulary. And then through that feedback mechanism, we're able to mature our IM framework and mature the product and how we're supporting and offering value to the business. The other thing that we're doing in addition to maturing that IM framework is rolling out new functionality while groups are using it. So some of the benefits of that, of course, is that our project can deliver something of business value across the organization quicker than going branch by branch. It also reduces the effort because what we find is as you go from branch by branch or directorate by directorate, you would have a lot of similarities between them. And so you kind of end up duplicating a lot of the effort. Maybe some things might be called different words, but at the end of the day, it was very similar functionality. And so what we're doing is creating, getting everybody to agree on that enterprise approach, and then we all use the same words and solution across all of our information. It helps reduce the support and maintenance of individual business line solutions because there's just one solution that everybody's using. And then because all the data and the information is being managed and stored in the same way and is consistent, now we can start thinking about workflows and supporting business process and automation, business intelligence. And that, of course, is because our data is consistent. Some of the challenges with this approach is that, pulling together representatives at the right level to participate in those working groups. So getting that group together, running it, and of course there's different unique business needs that people want to see inside that framework. So facilitating those workshops and getting agreement and arriving at that enterprise solution can be challenging. Also, we really wanted to focus on the enterprise needs. So that's the 80% over the 20%. So if a business line had unique needs, we asked to park that and look really at things that met that enterprise criteria. And, we're not trying to accommodate all of the information. And that's part of, some failures or lessons learned, I would say, from previous projects is when you're implementing an IAM system is shooting for 100% of the information that your organization creates. We must have it done in a structured, managed way. So what we're really looking at is let's get, common things that everybody uses and then start maturing it from there. Also, this framework, it's a foundation for the business lines to use. So we're not necessarily going into a business line, setting up their site, setting up their metadata, migrating content, and really kind of getting stuck in the delivery of that. What we're doing is we're providing a framework that's repeatable, it's consistent, and then we're depending on the IAM community to leverage and adopt and build their M365 sites in aligning that with our framework. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about using the right app in M365. So this approach I'm showing here, I've used at other organizations, and it's what we're implementing at ESCC and Agriculture. So from an IM perspective, we're going to start with the focus on 4 applications. So that's email, Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. So for email, we acknowledge that many users are still using this as the primary communication and collaboration tool. So especially when working with other FedGov departments, vendors, and external users. Email doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, but we are promoting other tools such as Teams for chats and conversations and external collaboration with external guests. SharePoint, we're promoting as the primary document repository, and then OneDrive for personal storage. So what we want to move away from is email becoming this de facto IAM repository. It's not easily shared with large groups, and collaboration features are lacking, and it's tied to an individual user account. So information of business value can be lost if the user deletes it or leaves the organization. So at both the ESCC and Agriculture, we were looking at email management tools to help us drive that vision for email. So we're using Harmony, and it really provides value in moving that IAM vision forward. So I've also implemented Harmony at almost every client I've worked for in the past. It's been successful in helping us with driving user adoption and to help align with what our IAM goals and visions and best practices are. So for those of you that don't know, Harmony allows users to quickly move IBV, either emails or attachments to those emails, into an appropriate repository. So that'd be SharePoint or Teams or OneDrive. And then it also allows users to get it out and share that content through email as links or attachments as required. Okay, so moving on to Teams and appropriate usage when comparing it to SharePoint and other apps. So this is probably one of the more contentious topics within organizations. And at the end of this presentation, I do have an appendix that compares Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive from an IAM perspective. I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough time to go through that appendix today. but I have included it. So if you want to take a close look, I'd also be happy to have further conversations with people on that topic. But based on how Teams functions, how the information is managed, how it's searched and accessible, most organizations I work with decide to use Teams for collaboration. So it's a group of people working on a specific work objective. So that would be things like projects, work initiatives, event plannings, committees, and so on. And then they designate SharePoint as the primary corporate repository, as it has that additional functionality that's required for a corporate enterprise IM tool. So OneDrive is the personal storage area. So Microsoft's done a lot of work on that recently. It's very integrated with OneNote and Whiteboard. Your meeting recordings end up automatically getting saved there. It's also the default storage location if you're rolling out Office, M365 Office Suite. So it is an important part of the IM landscape, and sometimes gets written off as a transitory area without any IBV and kind of ignored a little bit by the IM vision. So what we're doing at ESTC in Agriculture is making sure that OneDrive is included as part of our strategy and communications and training materials. So moving on with this, hang on, let me try to get this out of the way here. So moving on with this concept of using the right app, some of you might recognize this from TBS. I changed it a little bit for our needs at ESTC in Agriculture, but the concept is the same. So we have me, we, and us along the top. So how I like to think about this is just a tool to help users understand using the right app based off of the scope and the state of the information that they're working on. Okay, so for the me column, this is collaboration with just myself or a few others. It's not yet known if this information has business value, and users are expected to be using email and OneDrive, personal notebooks here, and tasks to manage their activities and information that's scoped for them. If we move over to the we column, again, the business value of the information might not be yet determined, and we expect users to be mostly leveraging Teams and Team Notebook and planners for their activities, possibly SharePoint sites. But the main idea is that, it's a subset group of people that are working on a specific task or outcome. And the me and we is how most people operate. We don't think in terms of working with 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 people. We kind of work on our own content inside our own groups and teams, and most users and organizations already do me and we fairly well. Where we often struggle is with this last column over here, which is the us. Okay, so from an IM perspective, you want the information to be available, searchable. You want to minimize your copies and rework. You want to be able to support the business and the processes on this information. So with ESTC in Agriculture, SharePoint is identified as the primary app that's going to meet that enterprise IM need. So we're talking about defining our enterprise standards here, having consistency and governance for your information that's being stored in SharePoint. All right, so that's kind of some of the base concepts that I wanted to cover before I jump into our roadmap and taking a closer look at our minimal viable product. Before I move on to this, though, I did want to mention that ESTC in Agriculture, we're leveraging out-of-box M365 with E5 licensing. We're really doing our best to avoid any customizations and third-party tools. So things like support for both English and French is quite good with the out-of-box product. I don't know if everybody here is aware, but there's a new update coming out in August where Microsoft is rolling out their multi-language support, not just for communication sites in SharePoint, but also team sites. They're adding some additional support for some of the navigation and managing the content that's on those sites. Also, at Agriculture, I worked with their accessibility team. We did an assessment, and just the out-of-box, as long as we're using the out-of-box web parts, hub sites and the out-of-box navigation, it actually scored higher than their previous on-premise installations of SharePoint, where they spent a lot of time and money raising that accessibility score. So, between the official languages support and accessibility support and everything that you can do with out-of-box configuration, that's really what we're trying to focus on here. Layer on Power Apps and Power Automate and Power BI, Those tools are what we're trying to leverage, that Microsoft landscape, instead of looking at bigger customizations and third-party tools for the product. All right, so let's take a look at the high-level IM roadmap. So I just want to tell you that this roadmap is really focused on IM, so it's not a product roadmap, and it is a high level. I just want to give everybody here an idea of what we're doing. So we kind of group our deliverables into 3 waves, or 3 parts. So the first one is to get operational. So that's what I was talking about before with our enterprise delivery approach. We want to get this product from an IM perspective in front of the business to use it and to mature it as quickly as we can. So that's where we came up with this idea of a minimal viable product and what that includes. I'm going to go through that in more detail in the later half of this presentation, but it includes hubs and navigation. So I'm not sure if everybody knows, but Sharepoint does have a homepage that provides a global navigation. So on every site that you navigate, there's this gray bar over on the left, and that's called a global nav. It also provides other features, but we're primarily focusing on the global nav. So this is an enterprise level navigation. So we're trying to, as part of our MVP, is get that set up and deployed. So that no matter where you are, users can navigate across branches, across directorates and divisions, because this is our corporate repository. We need the ability to share this information and use and reuse it and all that stuff. So navigating is a big part of being able to find that information. And then I'm going to, a couple slides, I'm going to show what we're doing for hub sites, but hub sites is kind of the new, it's taking over from subsites. So Microsoft best practices no longer want subsites. So if you're on previous versions of on-premise SharePoint, you might have this site hierarchy. And what Microsoft has done is launch this concept of hub sites, which is a logical pointer of sites and a grouping of sites. And it gives you a few things like search scope, consistent navigation across any sites that are connected to a hub site. And the great thing about hub sites, unlike subsites in previous versions of SharePoint, is that it's not sharing the database or the back end. It's just a logical pointer. So if you need to move a site to a different hub site or change how that works, it's only a few clicks of a button instead of trying to separate that information and migrate it over and things like that. Also included in our MVP is the IM framework. So I'm going to show you some screenshots where I go over what's included in that framework. But basically, this is the defining our different information types, what metadata they have, what types of permissions they are. And then as we mature that, we would look at maybe workflows that we can add on to that framework. And then we have provisioning. So provisioning is really how we're going to apply that framework in M365. What we've done is we've built a Power App that allows users to request from a catalog. So we have a catalog of sites and a catalog of libraries, and they're all pre-configured and they have our framework embedded into it. So it's very quick and easy. You don't have to be SharePoint experts. You don't have to read through a lot of IM guidance and policies. You simply use our provisioning tool, and then we set up your site for you, and your library is consistent and repeatable across the organization. And then, of course, the last part would be our change requests and IM governance. So this is really how we grow our MVP and mature it. So business lines can say, I like this. Can I have a change in this controlled vocabulary? Can I add this metadata or library type? And then those requests go up to an enterprise IM governance committee that review it and say, yes, this is great from an enterprise perspective and it meets our guidelines. So we're going to add that to our catalog and to our framework and make it available for everybody. So once you're getting up and running, at this point, we're going to move into the second wave. Just to give you an idea, at ESTC, we're very close to being complete our first wave. So we're looking at around July. At agriculture, it's going to be around September. And we've already started working on some of the design and requirements for our second wave parts. So the objective in the second wave is to mature our MVP and roll out new capabilities. So that's around advanced search. When I say advanced search, we have some metadata, not just for documents, but also at the site or team level. And so you can search by branches or directorates or divisions and find all of their project sites or committee sites or document repository sites or communication sites, so on and so forth. And then you can filter it by type of committee level or the committee type or scope and things like other metadata that we've applied to our sites and teams. And of course, you can also do advanced search for documents. So if you want to search for financial documents, and we've decided that at an enterprise level, fiscal year is a key piece of metadata for financial documents, you'll be able to search and filter and pick and choose what documents you want based off of the business line and the fiscal year and so on and so forth. So that's really what advanced search is. For IM reporting, this is going to help us understand what is being used successfully, what isn't being used successfully, which terms are being used, what site templates and library templates are being used the most, and it's really going to be used to help us manage and govern our IM framework moving forward. For lifecycle management, this can be for your containers, such as your sites and your teams. So I have a team for a project. My project's over. I got all this content. What do I do with it? Where does it go? What do I do with that team? Same thing with SharePoint sites. Maybe nobody's been active in it. No documents have been modified in 3 months or 6 months. What do I do with that? And how do I know that that's happening? So that I don't end up with, thousands of teams and SharePoint sites across my organization. I don't know what to do with them. So that's what lifecycle management is about. It's also about document types. So if you're to think about a policy, maybe a few people write a policy, then they need to send it around for review. When people are happy with policy, it's got to go to legal, then maybe official languages, and then it's published out and it's opened up to 5,000 people or 20,000, depending on the size of your organization. So being able to help through our IM framework, help the business manage that process because the permissions have changed. Maybe where it's organized and stored needs to change. So you have some type of publishing process where the published document goes somewhere else. So that's what lifecycle management is about. And then expanding the catalog. So I talked a couple times now about this kind of like Sears catalog of SharePoint sites and team sites and libraries and things like that that users can pick from. So continually growing that, starting off with your minimal viable product and then growing it into maybe programs or science or whatever it is that your department does, so that it's better and better for your business lines. And then the third wave, it's to focus on compliance and advanced features. So these are things like e-discovery and hold, so you can do your parliamentary questions and freedom of information requests, your litigation and hold information. This is where we would look to apply our retention and disposition because we have a framework built. We understand how the information is being organized. We understand what metadata we have. And so at this point in time, this is now where we can layer on our retention and disposition. Notice I'm not saying records management. It's about identifying what information you need to retain for how long, what information you can dispose. And then also looking at other ways to help business drive business value by auto-populating metadata. So our MVP does have a bunch of auto-population of metadata, and talk about that in a second, but there's other ways that we can also populate metadata through templates and forms, machine learning and AI and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we've laid out our roadmap for IM. Based off of our requirements and objectives. Okay, so let's talk about our minimal viable product. So what is it? So as I went over before with the enterprise delivery approach, what we did is we worked with our business representatives to establish this, and we're trying to get it in front of users as quickly as possible. And then through operational governance, now that we're up and running in an operational mode, we're going to ask the business to help us mature it through requests and also future project deliveries. So inside the minimal viable product, I talked about and touched on each of these. In the roadmaps, we have our hubs and navigation for all of your branches and directorates and divisions. We have our framework, which is our information types and our metadata from a business perspective, not metadata from a compliance or records management perspective. Our provisioning tool, which we've written in Power Apps, which includes some workflows and approval workflows. and also some scripts to automatically create the sites and teams and libraries. And then our change request, which is how we're going to mature it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about hubs and navigation. So hubs, from an IM perspective, what we're looking at them to provide is consistent navigation across our sites. So if I'm in a division or a director and I got 10 sites or 100 sites, whatever that is, they need to be connected to a hub. So that's a base rule, is that our sites have to be connected to a hub. And it's so that users can follow that navigation. So at an enterprise level, I can get to our hubs. Then once I'm in our hubs, I can get to the other sites that are connected and related to that. And then I can always use search and stuff like that, but that's how I'm going to find information. So the other thing that hub sites offer you is a search, okay? So it's kind of really cool to use, actually. I just saw a demo yesterday where one of the business lines uploaded a document with the same title at an enterprise level, then within one of the sites within the hub, and then within and the hub site, and then within a specific site connected to the hub. And it was kind of really cool to watch this demo because they did a search at the tenant level and all 3 documents came back. Then they showed how you can go to a hub, do a search, and 2 documents came back, the one in the hub and the site. And then of course they went to a site and did a search and got the document back from the search. So that's really nailing home the example of how hub sites and the connected sites drive that search scope for your users so that they're getting better value and the right results back in that search. So also for the hub, we defined a template. So every hub is the same. So business lines do get their own hub sites, and they can manage the links that are below this, but at the top level, every time a user goes to a hub site, they're going to see these same links. So it's called our spaces. We had lots of debate over what to call these, went around between organization structures and my teams and all types of stuff. But in the end of the day, we landed on our spaces, and really this is more of an organizational view. So if I'm in a branch, I would expect to see, my directorates under here and my divisions and so on and so forth as I navigate down. So these would be links to the corporate repository sites for IM, depending on which branch or directorate or division you're in. The rest of these are more of a functional based navigation. So maybe you're in a branch or directorate or division that provides certain services and functions. So this is not an intranet. It's not meant to explain to people what those services and functions are. These are the corporate repository where those tools and materials and information related to that are developed and stored and housed. And then of course you have your committees and governance, and this could be across multiple areas, same with projects and initiatives. In some groups, what I've noticed is, there might be a project or initiative that's being run by national office, but this is a regional hub site. Well, they still put that project under their project and initiatives because they wanted their users, they know that they're going to be impacted by this. So they put that under their projects and initiatives, and users can navigate and get to it. All right, now before I show you the IA framework, I did want to talk about something that we're doing here. So as we all know, the main gripe with IM is that we rely heavily on users to enter in the metadata and tag it. We really want to remove that dependency. It's annoying for users and it doesn't allow them to do their work. And it's also, you want to have more consistency and standards in the metadata that you're driving your downstream processes off, such as retention and disposition and e-discovery and holds and business workflows and processes and business intelligence. So really want to make sure that this is right. So we're heavily invested in ASTC and agriculture and auto-populating this metadata wherever possible. So for the MVP, we're doing what's called location-based inheritance. And out of the box, there's not really a great way to apply metadata at a container level, so at a workspace level. So when I say workspace or container, I mean a site or an MS team. So we've come up with an approach, and there's a few different options, but we've come up with an approach where every site or team that we create has a list on it that contains these site properties. And so in the next screen, I'm going to show you what those properties are, but it might tell you who the office of primary interest is for the information on this site and who your business contacts are and other information. This is a committee site or a project site. And then that metadata, once we know it at the workspace or container level, when you provision a library then through our tool, we can auto-populate a lot of that metadata. And we can do that because SharePoint Search works out of box with documents. And so we want to make sure that that stuff is inherited. Also, if the documents get moved somewhere else, we want to make sure that metadata is carried forward. And we don't want users to have to tag it. And so this is called location-based inheritance. We're also using it at a library level with default values that get pushed down. We also use it as a folder level, which is, I can't remember when that came out, but if you're on a previous version like SharePoint 2010, you wouldn't have had this option available to you. So we have financial libraries with fiscal year folders in them. And if users upload or create documents inside those fiscal year folders, it just gets the fiscal year tag. They don't have to worry about tagging that. So that's called location-based inheritance. And then what we're doing, of course, I talked about this in the roadmap, is once we get some of the other functions out of the way from the second wave, we're going to start looking at rolling out consistent document templates, workflows that can auto-populate that metadata, machine learning through SharePoint syntax and other tools, querying Active Directory and getting some user data from there that can auto-populate. You can even reach out to other systems like PeopleSoft and SAP and stuff like that and help that to auto-populate your document metadata inside SharePoint. So with that being said, I'm just going to talk a little bit about where our framework started, okay? So our framework starts at the workspace and container level. So this would be at sites, SharePoint sites, or MS Teams, where users are storing most of their information, okay? So again, we do this to support location-based inheritance. It also helps when we do our advanced search. Now we can find sites and teams, not just documents. And so we can find those workspaces. We also know who owns the information in the site. We've called that business authority. Some people might call it office of primary interest. But we did have this term called business authority. And these are the people, it's at a DG level or higher. And these are the people that make the decisions around disposition. If there's e-discovery and holds or audits and there's questions around that, this is really the custodian for the information that's held inside that container. And we want business authority to be automatically inherited by every document in the site. And so when we're provisioning a site, we ask, what type of template do you want? What type of site is this? Is this a document repository site or a project or committee and governance, so on and so forth? And then we ask some additional information like who's the business authority. We also store this idea of an Eim Accreditation Model. So we came up with an accreditation that says, okay, this site is not accredited or it's a bronze, silver, or gold. And we have different parameters that says, okay, if you're doing these 10 things and your users are trained and you have site owners that are trained properly, then you get a bronze or you get a silver or gold. And that shows us we can do reporting now on how many sites there are within your branch or directorate or across your whole department. We can say what level of accreditation there are, and it's transparent. We put that on a SharePoint site and people can look at that information. It almost creates like this friendly competition, you know, because you want higher and higher levels of accreditation to say that you're aligned with this. And then we also collect some additional metadata. If it's a project, then we ask, okay, well, some information about the project, what's the start date, the end date, so on and so forth, who's the sponsor, and so on. And then that metadata, again, can be passed down or pushed down to the documents inside those sites and containers so we can use it for workflows and searching and business intelligence. All right, so once we get away from the containers and we start thinking about the documents that are being held within these containers and workspaces, we sat down and we worked with our business representatives to say, all right, what metadata does every document have to have, no matter what? And this is the list that we came up with. So up here we have a document ID, which is a SharePoint service, but it's been around for a long time, I think since 2010, if memory serves me right. But basically, this gives you a static URL, so it doesn't matter where that document moves. If you've shared this URL or this doc ID number, you can put it in your cover page on your documents or in your headers or footers on your pages if you'd like to print things out. You can always find that document and people know where it is. And this is just a service. SharePoint takes care of this for you. Then we have our standard SharePoint system fields, which a lot of people are probably familiar with. So who created it, modified it, our versioning. And then we added some custom metadata here for document language, document status, and we did go with simple here. So you can imagine this type of conversation with business reps across all the branches as we're talking about, well, what should the values be for document status? You know, we probably got like a list of 20 or 30 different statuses, but we all did agree that the primary purpose of a document status is to know if this is a final version or still a work in progress. And so everybody agreed, yeah, this would offer us the most value to our users and organization. And these other 17 or 18 different statuses, we can handle in a different way. They might be unique to a specific division or department. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying about really focusing on the enterprise needs and the needs of many and not that 20%. So this is what we ended up with document status. Business authority is auto-populated from the site or team. I think I've talked about that a lot. And we also, receive a lot of documents for external sources. So TBS documents, policies and guidelines, maybe things from the Department of Justice, and so on and so forth. And so if you're storing that in our corporate repository, we want to know that it's from an external source, and we have those listed here. What was the version number? Because your SharePoint version number might be different than the version number that TBS is tracking to, and when did we receive it? Then we have out-of-box label called sensitivity label. We're leveraging that for TBS security classification. So we have unclassified, protected A, protected B. And when you do label your documents with one of these, it automatically puts the header in saying what security classification this document is in the upper right according to TBS standards. Now we can report on this. We can also use it in the future for things like data loss prevention and other policies and rules around working with sensitive information. Retention labels are part of our core. We don't have this in use right now because that's in our third wave, but the plan is to use the out-of-box M365 Compliance Center retention label. And then, as I mentioned, we're using Harmony. So if you do drag an email from Outlook into SharePoint or Teams using Harmony, it captures this information, okay? And this is so that you can search it and find it later on. And this is all the email information. So that's our core. So everybody has this. Once we established our core in our working group, we really look to establish a base set of information types and metadata that's going to be part of our minimal viable product. So this diagram I'm showing you here is just a very small snapshot. Actually, I have like a much more in-depth Excel file. We started with the Eim Common Core, then we started talking to our business lines. We were focused on business needs, so not compliance or records management needs. So when we talked about metadata, we ask the business people, okay, when you work with financial documents, how do you work with them? When they said, oh, well, fiscal year. Okay, well, when we're doing facilities, how do you group and organize it? Well, by facility. And so you can see kind of here, I have some examples of our categories and some things. So if you're dealing with an executive material, we want to know the audience level for that material. Is it DG, ADM, DM? What is it? What fiscal year is it created? So you can see it's minimal metadata here that we're driving this. We're trying to auto-populate this metadata as much as possible. And I'll show you that in executive materials, when you have a library where you're storing executive materials, we have fiscal year folders. If the business wants to, they can also set up folders for different audience levels. And then when they drag and drop documents inside those folders, it will auto tag it. Or you could create multiple libraries, maybe executive materials for your DM, executive materials for ADM, however you want to organize it. That's fine. And you can set library default values that'll auto-populate this metadata. So we're really focused on that location-based inheritance. In the example of facilities, we're using document sets. Okay, so those are collections. So you would create a collection you would enter in what the facility is, and then you work inside that collection, that document set. So every document you create, it just inherits that facility and data about that facility that you want to have pushed down. And so the users don't have to worry about populating that metadata, but yet they can use it in business processes and reports and searching and finding it and stuff like that. Same thing with staffing and whatnot. So we have a base model as part of our MVP. Then we continue to expand it. We're looking to add on, more program information. For agriculture, it would be more looking at Department of Science and bringing on more information types and metadata for that. And we're just going to grow it and grow it and grow it. But the key point is that even though this represents maybe 15% of their data at ESDC, for example, we're going to get this in front of users in about a month. Okay, and they're going to start using it. And then they'll still have their own custom libraries that they create because they have other information needs. But we're going to look at those and do some reporting on those custom information, look and try to see, well, can we add some enterprise libraries now so that they don't have to make this custom? And we'll just pick away at this information until we get to a point where we say, okay, you know what, that's enough. We probably won't have 100% of the information accounted for, but that's not the goal here. The goal here is to drive business value and get to a point where we're in a pretty good place. All right, so the other thing that I was talking about is the provisioning tool. So this is written in Power Apps right now at ESDC. However, they have purchased AvePoint, which is a larger cloud governance tool built for M365. So later on, we're going to be looking at rolling that out. At Department of Agriculture, we're sticking with the Power Apps. They're a little bit of a smaller organization, so it's easier to manage. There are about 5,000 at Department of Agriculture. So we've built this Power App. Users go to it and they say, okay, I want a space, a workspace. And they can say, I want a communication site or a team or a Sharepoint site. And then we gather that information that I was talking about at that workspace level. And when that's done, their site is built and they have a bronze accreditation. And once they have a bronze, they can now use our library catalog. So picture it like an Amazon shopping cart or a Sears catalog, whatever. And we have a selection. You say, okay, well, I need somewhere to put some financial stuff. I need somewhere to manage my staffing process, executive material. So we're not forcing this structure on the business. The business saying, okay, well, this is what my needs are, and they're picking from our catalog, and that comes pre-configured. So they don't have to be Sharepoint experts. The content types are set up, the metadata permissions are set up. In the future, we're going to start adding workflows to those and templates and things like that, but it's all done. And we've also decided ahead of time whether those libraries are open or closed. So open means, it's primarily unclassified information in here, and it should inherit the permissions from the site, and people should be able to search it and have a look at that content. And then if it's a closed library, it's because of that information has more sensitive information, and it's a smaller group of people that should be able to have access to it. And so when we create this library, we say, okay, we know if it's open or closed, and if it's closed, we get the initial permissions right there in the provisioning tool. We say, okay, it's a closed library, and then we set that up for them. And so folks will have, the right folks will have access to the right information. It's protected according to our Eim framework. So they request the libraries. It's scripted. So instead of taking weeks or months to set up your sites and all your libraries, you pick from the pick list. Our scripts automatically created. This process might take a day, and you turn around and all your libraries are there, 10, 15, or 20, or 1 or 2, depending on what you're trying to do. Also, some of our site templates, like project sites and so on, have some default libraries. So if it's a project site, it comes with 2 libraries, which is a project administration library and a project document library, and it has the right metadata and permissions already set up for those. All right, and last here, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time check. I've kind of forgotten. I'm right up against it, aren't I? It was 2:30 here. Okay, so I'm going to close out here. So the last thing, of course, is the change request. So we built this in Sharepoint as Sharepoint lists. Business can go in, they can click some buttons. say I need to request a new site or team or library template because they want to help add a catalog. I want to change the metadata or controlled vocabulary, or I want a hub site, or I need to associate a site to a hub site. And then we have an Eim governance process that we follow, a committee that we go to who makes decisions at an enterprise level, because we are trying to manage this at an enterprise level. And then we have an operational team within our Eim group that then implements that change out into M365. Okay, and just as I was saying in the use the right app section, there is an appendix there. SharePoint is behind Teams and OneDrive, and of course SharePoint. So, it's all SharePoint. What's the difference? So I can't go into this into detail, but basically we've talked about some of the Eim concepts and requirements that we want to do, and kind of which products have what available there. Okay. So I think that's it for me, Eric.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. Really great chat on information management. It's obviously something that you're passionate about, and something that you spend a lot of time on. We actually have basically no questions. So Ian, you did such a great job of presenting that you've answered everyone's questions organically.
Or I put everybody asleep.
One of the two. But obviously in the chat, you can see that we have our YouTube channel linked there, so you can see our other M365 presentations. And if you would like this PowerPoint, please reach out directly to me. I am on I was the Orangutech representative who sent out the invitation to your inbox. So if you would like the PowerPoint, please reach out directly to me. And I'm going to put Ian on the spot right here. Ian, do I have your permission to send out your PowerPoint to those that request it?
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Okay. Put them on the spot. We're good to go. So please reach out to me. I'll get you that PowerPoint, and then we can maybe continue the conversation. We've had Daniel St. Cartier come on and talk information management. We've had Ian Taylor come on and talk information management, and not all departments on this are the same, and so not all information management strategies are the same. Orangutech prides itself on being able to offer a lot of strategies that fit a lot of different departments, and there are differences, and there are we do offer both, and not all departments are the same, so not all solutions are the same. But I would like to thank you all for coming today. I'm going to give you 8 minutes back. Our next Government of Canada M365 Council meeting will be in September. Please enjoy your summer. Hopefully you're getting some time off, doing some traveling like the rest of Canada, and please enjoy your summer. And until September, have a great one. Bye.